Hello, and welcome to the Click and Debate podcast. Today we're going to be talking about no, we're not. The inauguration was boring as shit. Nothing happened. Nothing mattered. The media lied to you. We're not going to talk about that. Mesh, instead, I'd love to talk to you about what does red pilling, blue pilling, white pilling, and black pilling mean?
Well, blue pilling is the inauguration. So that's a prescient example that you brought up there. But again, we don't really have to talk about it. Thankfully, that's actually a situation that they created that was never going to happen anyways. So there's your blue pill. That's a great example of a blue pill. Um,
Well, and even
basically,
more
what
specifically, right? The blue pill would be like if you believe that's what actually would happen, right? If you just said, "Oh
yeah,
no, I believe the entire narrative," they found that there was going to be terrorists show up, so they
yeah,
employed the National Guard and they stopped it. And it's like, yeah, then you're blue pilled as fuck if you think that's
yeah.
true.
Essentially, blue pill is buying into, at least partially buying into, the institutional narrative that's out there. So when I say institutional narrative, I mean news corporations, academia, um, bureaucratic government agencies, intelligence agencies, all the information disseminating um, institutions. They generally tend to coalesce around one type of narrative, maybe with some slight variances, but these days those variances are pretty small. Um, so if you find yourself buying rather deeply into that general narrative, that's called blue pill. Um,
Yeah, and I like what I've been hearing a lot of libertarians call it, which is the cathedral, right? It's like that's the cathedral
yes,
narrative because it's not just like the Senate or the presidency or whoever, right? It's and also I include both Democrats and Republicans in this, right? Mitch McConnell is
yeah,
as
oh
much a
yeah,
part of the
oh
cathedral
100%.
as anybody. So don't mistake blue pill for meaning like you're a Democrat. That's not what this means.
Nope, nope,
It means you're essentially kind of part of the matrix. That's where it comes from. And it's like
yeah,
if you believe CNN, who hires ex CIA people, if you believe Fox News, who hires ex CIA people,
yep,
right, and has
dude,
all these ex, congressmen or congress workers or all these people who worked in politics, if you're believing their narrative, that essentially is blue pilled. And that doesn't mean they're always wrong, right? Sometimes they are correct,
right,
but they're always trying to shape the narrative, regardless of what the
yeah,
facts are. So that's the blue
yeah,
pilled.
yeah. The way blue pilled usually works is through a mechanism that I like to call like lie by omission. So what they usually do is they have a narrative that they decide upon. So they have a conclusion that they want to have reached. It's sort of like running a science experiment or doing a science fair project, but you have a conclusion in mind already, and you write the conclusion first before you do the experiments. And so they already have that in mind. They have an end goal in mind. And what they do is they work backwards from that and they cherry pick facts that line up with that narrative, or sometimes they round up on factoids, so they might exaggerate a little bit, to say the least, and they leave out facts that don't. And it turns out when you omit facts that counter your general thinking, that is actually a form of a lie. It's called a lie by omission. You can look this up. It's like psychology 101. I don't pretend to know a ton about psychology, but this is a thing that people do. It's like uh, so this is kind of the tactic that they take, generally. So you're like, oh, look, facts first, and we got all the facts. It's like, no, you've got some of the facts. You got the facts that line up with the institutional narrative that was decided upon before going out to look for facts. Um, so that's generally what kind of blue pilling means. And yes, it's not. I think it's a great point that you bring up. It's not Democrat or Republican or whatever. It's the institutions which are proliferated by both. Though they are in general dominated a little bit more these days by one, it still doesn't really matter. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And,
so that's kind of what blue pill is.
and and to go off on a small tangent before we come back to like what red pill, white pill, black pill is too, is Joe Rogan brought this up. That was very interesting. So there was a doctor in Florida who got the COVID vaccine and died, right? And I'm not
Yes.
trying to scare anybody, say the vaccine's bad or anything like that. It's just a fact, right? And also, it should be noted that it's a fact that sometimes bad things happen for people who get vaccines. I'm not saying vaccines cause autism, but if you don't think like vaccines have ever done anything in not inappropriate, but just like catastrophic to somebody, you're kind of living on the ostrich farm, right? Like your head's in the sand. Um, so it's like that happened. Google did not show it. Like whenever you tried to search for that result, you couldn't find it. DuckDuckGo showed it instantly. It's
Right.
like, yeah, that's the blue pilling, right? Where it's like, oh, well, it's not on Google, so therefore it doesn't exist. That's the blue pill narrative, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where that comes from. So we got blue pill. Let's go to the opposite. What's a red pill? Or what's red pilling? What is the red pill? Let's go from there.
Yeah. So again, Matrix analogy. Red pill is when you start to see the things that are missed on purpose or by very convenient coincidence, in my mind. So we were just talking about you have these narratives, you work backwards, you cherry pick the facts that reinforce that narrative, and you leave the ones out that don't. Well, red pill, in my mind, has been the process of seeing the ones that are left out, um, and seeing that they're in fact extremely valid or based on something that is valid, even if they're not 100% accurate. And once you see the things that are left out on purpose or, like I said, by a very convenient coincidence, it's very hard to unsee them. And so that general feeling of seeing what was once unseen and now it's like really hard to see it with a limited scope that the blue pilling requires. Uh, that's what I call red pill. But I'd love to hear what you kind of think of red pilling.
I think that pretty much sums it up, right? But it even to an extent, I use examples more for red pilling. I think blue pilling is a little bit easier to define because it's just kind of believing the state narrative, right? Believing the cathedral narrative, as it were. Red pilling is kind of the anti of that, but not exactly, in my opinion, right? Because, like I said, they don't always lie. They just omit stuff and they shape the narrative. And so red pilling is just seeing through that. So it's not that you're not believing their narrative or that it's the exact opposite of their narrative. You just know that they're lying to you, so you have to find out what the true thing that happened is, right? What are the true facts of the situation that matter? So an example, I mean, the most obvious example of something that could red pill you is you look back at 2004, weapons of mass destruction, right? CIA
Yes.
lied their
Yeah.
asses off. They propagated it through the New York Times, through CNN, through Washington Post, all these places that are always pro-war. And you notice it's like they just didn't ask any questions. And also all these people have like CIA are essentially CIA talking points almost always. Like CNN, in fact, just hires people from the CIA. Like John Brennan is on there all the time. We know
Yeah.
that guy lied. We know that guy ran a torture program and should be in jail, but he's not. Right? They have James Comey on, who we know lied his ass off and probably should be in jail, but he's not. So it's like the red pill is when you see these institutions for what they are, which is just complete, actors of the states is what they are, right? They are just acting on behalf of the state to propagate whatever narrative they need to. That's just how they stay employed. They also get funding from them. Like they get everything they need. And the red pill is just noticing like, oh yeah, they're probably full of shit. Anytime they come on, just assume they are lying their asses off.
Yeah, I think that's a great analysis. I want to say like the red pill is when you do the most basic question asking. It's not even like deep research, right? Like it's just kind of like, okay, why is this guy here and is that a good thing? Like
Right.
really, really basic stuff. Like, okay, so information agencies, we saw what they did with in terms of disinformation and misinformation in several places all across the world. It's been a kind of a big problem in terms of foreign policy. Not really a secret. It's actually very well chronicled. Um, Ironically, the left used to bash this quite a bit. Um, but yeah, once you see that, then you're like, oh, now they're hired by our news agencies, the people that are like basically the experts on misinformation and disinformation, disseminating that stuff. Definitely rivaled by the likes of Putin and the Kremlin. But now they're they're high up in news organizations. And also, by the way, they propagated weapons of mass destruction and that whole
Uh,
thing. So
Russian collusion, they propagated
yeah.
that as well. We know
Oh
that's
yeah.
false. We've known that's false for years. The FBI knew it in 2017.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah,
or or the strange Hunter Biden thing, which was like, oh, the FBI is actually investigating this, but the news must not report this. It's like, okay.
yeah.
Um,
And then there
That's a
was
strange dissonance, but all right.
dozens of intelligence officials who claimed it felt like Russian misinformation.
Oh,
And it's
oh
like
yeah, yeah. Oh,
it
it feels
feels
like.
like what?
Yeah, yeah. We love hearing that as technical people. Just side note, when people are just like, it feels like the code isn't clean, and then push their glasses up their nose. Like, wait, what? What are you trying to say here? Like, this is you're not speaking in the realm of facts anymore. Um, which I thought was your thing, because you have a narrative and you back it up with facts first. But okay.
So the one thing I really got to correct you on though, there is
Uh-oh.
no way they're on the level of Putin. Putin wishes he had this kind of clout. Putin
Oh
looks at
yeah,
our stuff
it's
and is like,
true.
oh God, I would just like jizz in my pants if I had anywhere near the pool that like this nonsense media organization or apparatus that the U.S. has. Like, because people in Russia, it's funny. I talked to a couple Russians when I've been on vacations in other countries and stuff, and they're just like, no, we know it's a lie, right? But also,
Oh
it
yeah.
just doesn't really matter. Like, it's not like we can do a whole hell of a lot about it. So you know it's a lie. You just keep going on with your daily business. And it's like in the U.S., like half the people still believe it. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I have a couple Russian friends too. They're the same way. It's like, yeah, it's probably a lie. And also there's probably people dying behind the scenes. Like they have a very morbid, but I think realistic view of it, and even a little bit fearful, sadly. But yeah, they're just like it's kind of shocking that people believe that crap here in America. like they're above it. You know, it's like no, these governments are doing similar things.
The red
Um,
pill is a hard one though, because like you have to want to accept it, right? So it's hard to say, oh, I've been paying attention to this for 25, 30, 40 years, and
yeah,
you just don't note the lies. You don't remember, oh yeah, they lied to me about weapons of mass destruction. Oh yeah, they lied to me about the Patriot Act and how they were going to expand it, except they were going to sunset it and then they've expanded every time after that. Oh, and Bernie Sanders just magically missed that vote that where he would have been the deciding vote on. Right? It's like you just
yeah,
kind of keep adding these up. And it's like, oh, they might be fucking lying to me. It's like,
yeah. You're
yeah,
like,
they might be.
it's like, yeah, it's almost the beginnings of cynicism, but not quite there. I actually want to get back to that, but it's like it's definitely doubt. It's like, okay, there's legitimate, legitimately earned doubt. I would say, legitimately earned doubt from our information disseminating institutions, um, or if you want to really call it what it is, the ruling class, and we're the proletariat. So that's that's really what I think red pill is. I want to get back to the point of cynicism because uh, I want to jump to black pill because I think we
Let's
covered
do
red
it.
pill very well. So black pill, cynicism is a good starting point there. So it's like once you, it almost feels like a like if there's a diving board off of the end of red pill and you happen to go off of that diving board, I think that's where you end up is the black pill, which is like complete and total cynicism. This is a thing that I connect with personally because I felt like I was there for a little while. It's basically where you're like, okay, can I trust anything at all? Because there's so much uh,
So much
chicanery.
propaganda and nonsense.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, can I trust anything at all, even on any small scale? Like, can I trust the Telegram group that I'm in? Or like, can I trust the RSS
Whoa,
news
whoa.
feed that I
I'm sorry.
have?
Do you mean the terrorgram? That's
Oh
what I
yeah,
hear. It's the
Terrorgram.
terrorists.
That's right. Yeah. So it turns out that if you're not using one of the institution's favorite messaging apps, and you end up using something like Telegram, it's actually the home of domestic terrorism, even though the US is actually one of their smallest user bases. They generally tend to be used in countries where, people are dying when they mention that they like heavy metal music or something like that. That's, yeah, but, you know, apparently they're called Terragram now because I'm sure there's a few right wing people that
I like
are
it.
using it.
I'm stealing that before they try to solidify it, just so I can make sure
Yeah.
that it's known as being nonsense before they can use that term.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off on the black pill part, but I thought that
No.
was hilarious.
Yeah.
Terrorgram.
Terragram. Yeah. Well, quick, you know, they don't sponsor us or anything, but Telegram is a great messaging app. Has a lot of clout, especially overseas, where consequences are very real for speech. So, but anyways, yeah. So Black Pill is basically like almost unlimited cynicism. It's like where you can't trust. You feel like you can't trust anything. It's definitely a feeling more than a rational state of being. It's more of an emotional one. I would say. And so it's like you can't trust anything. Like you took the red pill, and now it's like, well, can I even trust the people that have taken the red pill with me? Like what exactly can I trust? Like you can kind of fake everything, you know?
Yeah, they're
Um,
fake agents. They're fake red pillars.
yeah, like I don't know what I could trust. Or I don't know if trust is a thing anymore. I might as well just live on my own, you know? So I would say that's my description of black pill. What are your thoughts on that?
I Similar to that, I would basically say it's almost equivalent to nihilism, right? Where you just believe
Yeah,
like it's all downhill from here. We're gonna collapse. There's no chance of recovery. It's over. I do like Michael Malice's take on it, where he's like, "Listen, if you meet somebody who's black pilled, just remove them from your life. There's nothing
yeah,
useful you can gain from them, right? It's
right,
just
yeah.
like they're
They're
so
heading.
they've lost all hope. They're out of it, and it's just such a drag to be around those people, right? And we all get those times where we're just like, oh, this is not going to work, right? It's just like you look into politics. Hell, you even get in a fight with your spouse or whatever, right? Like you just have these moments of nihilism, and then you bounce back and you realize I'm an idiot. Like, of course, there's shit we can do,
Yeah,
right? Let's just get to work. But that's honestly the best way I can describe it, right? It's just this form of nihilism where, like you said, you've got the red pill, so you don't believe anything the state says, but you almost go too far where you're like, I believe so little of what the state says, but they're the only thing that matters. And it's like, but they're not. But they are. They're the only thing that matters. We're all doomed. And
yeah, yeah.
it's like no, the fact they're acting like this means we actually got a lot of hope because a stable, bureaucratic setup does not act the way these people act. Right? This is actually the opposite of a black pill moment. This should be the white pill moment.
Yeah, and I wanna jump into white pill real quick, but I think that's a great description. It's almost like you take those moments and you stretch them out over time, and if you have it stretched out enough, that means you're black pilled basically. And so, like I said, I had a brief probably dip into that earlier. I think we mentioned it in an earlier podcast. I was like, I kind of feel like I'm in the black pill right now, but I'm no longer there, and I want to jump into the area that I think probably both of us are in. I want to say.
Oh, I'm super white pilled. Like I'm
Yep.
just like as white pilled as possible right now.
Yeah. White pilled. So why don't you go for it? Give them the description.
All right. And for one word here, right? What's the opposite of nihilism? Like you're super hopeful. And it's the same
Yes.
concept, right? You're red pilled, you see through the nonsense, you see the lies. But white pill is almost like you start to look around and notice all these people also taking the red pill with you, and you're just like, holy shit, we've got the numbers. We've got this. Like we can do this. And it's like the fact is people are seeing through this nonsense, right? The fact that we have tweets, basically we have receipts now. Politicians used to just lie and get away with it, right? That's Joe Biden for history. Is that he's had lies upon lies, plagiarism scandal, like all kinds of nonsense where he just lied about things. But now we have receipts. We can show what you said on Twitter. We can show what you said on video. It's easy to pop up. You can make a compilation on YouTube, right? So
Oh
the
yeah.
white pill is just it's the culmination of all of these people being red pilled and just having the hope that it's like, oh no, we can turn the system around because now we have enough of us who know that this is just bullshit and we can figure out how to fix it.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect description of what the white pill is. It's like almost like a boundless optimism, I would say. It just feels like anything is possible. So so in the way that the black pill kind of felt like it was nihilist in that, oh man, I don't know if you could do anything at all. It's like the white pill's kind of like, well, everything is kind of open. It just feels like everything is open. Like um and I encourage everyone to listen to D Rush's solo podcast. We would do these little solo podcasts kind of in between our podcasts to put out more content. And he had one on the case for optimism around around the advancement of tech, and that is a very prescient white pill topic. It's kind of like, oh, all this crazy stuff in tech is happening, but all of a sudden the internet is fun again, like the early 2000s or the late 90s kind of fun. It hasn't been like that in a long time, you know? Like as technical people that work at software companies, what we do is we hop around from software company to software company. We work on some software product, at the application layer of the networks of the network stack, um, that we sell as a service, for X dollars per month or whatever, and then you move to the next one that kind of does something for X dollars a month, and you move to the next one that does something for X dollars a month, and it's a very monotonous existence, actually. And
You
Uh,
didn't make it sound fun.
yeah. Oh, getting paid is kind of fun, but
That is fun.
uh,
You're right.
yeah, yeah. Um, and there are legit challenges. It's like scale is always really, really, really damn hard. I'm choosing when to centralize, um, which, like we always preach, is chosen far too often. But still, choosing when to do that is also a lot of fun. Um, there's a lot of really good challenges there. But my main point is that um, it's kind of monotonous. Like real earth shaking, kind of foundation shaking stuff hasn't happened in a while in terms of like the infrastructure of the internet. And now it's like, oh, there's something to fight for here. And this is new. I want to say one thing real quick. Like this feeling is newer to the United States population and not so new to other populations. So if you have friends in Iran who are, under a brutal kind of government regime, or Russia or any of these other countries who live in
Brazil.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, Brazil, and they live in these weird regimes and they want to live free. They're not necessarily happy there, obviously. Um, they had this feeling already of like, this is inevitable. Like a revolution of positivity is inevitable when it comes to the internet. And um, yeah, so there's a lot of I bring all that up to give an example of what a white pill kind of feels like. It's like, man, the alt tech, the alternative tech movement is going to happen. It is real. It's already happening, actually. The
Yeah.
underpinnings of it have existed for a while, and now it's just been lit on fire. And it's like, oh my God, it's fun. It's fun again. It's like they have something to fight for, you know? And so there's this um, just overwhelming feeling of like hopefulness and optimism and even a little bit of fun. It's like that's what I would describe as white pill.
Yeah. And especially the case for optimism, it's going to seem hard to some people who are expecting things to happen in a day, right? And just Rome wasn't built in a day. The new internet is what I'll call it. It's like that's not going to be built in a day either, right? It's going to take a lot of time for people to lay down the foundational pieces for you to start having this distributed setup, right? Where instead of these centralized approaches, you have some more decentralized or centralized in, we'll call it better locations, right? Maybe your
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
your maybe your API is centralized, but the actual service, like the servers that do everything, is not. Sorry, that's a little techy for some people, but it's like that's the concept, right? It's like we're going to move away from, oh, AWS controls 50% of the internet. It's like, nah,
Yeah.
fuck that. We're gonna have, nobody owns more than like 3%. That should be the real goal, and that brings with it some annoyances, right? Because if AWS owns 50%, you've kind of got your own networking, you've got stuff that can be specialized and customized. And if not, it's like, oh man, I got to be very generic because I got to work here and there and here and over there. But you also can't get your shit taken off at the whim of fucking Amazon. So that's nice. Like that's a
Yeah.
nice thing to have out of
That's
that.
pretty fucking awesome. Yeah.
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 But so what I want to do too is like, so we've kind of talked about the white pill and the case for optimism. I think the new internet will be born from this. Can we go over some real life examples of like blue, red, white, and black pill again, just so we can really sink it in? Because I know I got asked the other day, it's like, what even is a red and blue pill? And so I really want to make sure people come away from this. If you're listening, it's like you understand what these concepts are. You may or may not agree with them. That's up to you. That's your prerogative. But I'm really hoping you'll understand them, right? So
Yeah.
like, do you have a good blue pill? I mean, and maybe we kind of touched on it. It's like a good recent blue pill example.
Yeah, I want to say a good recent blue pill example is this recent media push around domestic terrorism, basically asserting that like, hey, 40 something percent of Americans are potential domestic terrorists, and a bunch of them already are, but the ones that are not are basically just a few misinformations and disinformations away, and we must actively fight the misinformation and disinformation to save them from themselves, but also fight off the ones that are already domestic terrorists. So just kind of this painting of a huge portion of the population as the other, that we're kind of seeing. I think that's a very prescient example, of a blue pill narrative.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious one for me. And I was watching a guy, Eric July. He also goes by Young Ripa 59, and he's on
Yeah.
YouTube. And he was talking about how he was doing a segment based on a segment that CNN did, where I cannot remember the person's name, but they suggested it is a problem that you have these conservative YouTubers who have more viewers than CNN does, and we have
Yeah.
to find a way to get rid of them and stop allowing them to send disinformation. It's like, time out, time out. Like, so you're just upset because you can't get all the ad revenue from those people. And guess what? If say you nuked Eric July's channel, you nuked Dave Rubin's channel, you nuked whoever you want to say, right? Michael Malice, uh, Dave Smith. It's like those are the people I kind of listen to more or less often. It's like, say you nuke them, they're not going back to CNN, right? CNN
Nope.
is Blue Pill Central. They will tell you what the state wants you to think, what they want you to know, and you're going to go with it, right? So that is the Blue Pill, like you said. They're going to tell you that we've got 40% of our population is domestic terrorists, and that in order to save yourself, you need to make sure you band with us to ban Telegram. It's Telegram. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, Telegram. Come on, get with it.
God, I'm sorry. You got to ban Telegram. You got to ban, groups off Facebook. Not Facebook itself. Facebook is fine. Just the groups. You got to ban Parler, the whole thing, not just groups. The whole thing is Parler. Minds.com, the whole thing. Gab, whole thing. Right? It's like they're going to tell you exactly what you need to ban and what the things that you can listen to and watch are. Right? Not so different than like conservatives of the 90s did, but today it's the Democrats of the 2020s.
Right. Yeah. The neoconservatives, of the early 90s are now the super cool institutional Democrats of today. So, but yeah, I think that's a great example. I think the one that you brought up, honestly, of weapons of mass destruction. I mean, God, if you are from that era of the original war on terror, how often did you hear that goddamn phrase? Remember that?
God.
It was
yeah,
every
when I was
day.
younger, because I was in high school at that time, so it's like
Yeah.
you just knew that we were moments away from having a nuclear attack on us, that we were
Yeah, you're
just
just like,
moments
oh,
away.
you're like, oh no, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Like that was hammered into your heads without any evidence whatsoever. And that was like a common narrative. A lot of people bought that on both sides of the aisle. And until you couldn't. And even now, I think there's some people that still defend it. So it's just like,
I mean,
it never went away. It never went away.
yeah. I will say I don't usually give props to him, but Bernie Sanders voting against that war, it's like I give props to that. It's like that took a
Yes,
lot of fucking
100%.
balls to do that. At
It
the
really
time.
did.
So,
It really did.
I don't like Bernie for a lot of things he's done recently, and I don't like his ideas, but I'll give him props for that one. That took some stones.
Yeah. I mean, that is the right way to have voted there, certainly. So yeah, I think that's the blue pill. Did you have a good example of the red pill?
So the best red pill example I can think of, and like we say, right? It's like it's taking the red pill means you start to see through the narratives, right? So if you look at, oh well, Donald Trump incited things, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't. That's actually irrelevant to this statement of red pilling. But Nancy Pelosi says he needs to be impeached because he incited. We have a tweet from 4 years ago of Nancy Pelosi saying this president is illegitimate. The electors should look at whether they want to do this or not. Like, she said all the things that she is touting the Republicans who should not get put into Congress and the Senate for, right? But nobody said shit about that at the time. And now when you bring it up, she just scoffs at you, just like, puh, this is ridiculous. Also, you notice a lot of reporters don't even bother asking because they know they're going to lose their privileges if they even, bring up that question to her. So it's like the red pill is seeing that and be like, oh, yeah, they might be full of shit. Right, that's the red pill moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. I'm trying to think of another one. Let me think of one that really did it for me. I mean, I got to be honest. Like the riots were a really big one for me.
Yeah.
The riots over the summer. I was just like, what is going on? Like, when was political violence okay? I've never been for that. I wasn't for it on January 6th for the idiots that went into the Capitol, which, my God, what an idiot do you have to be to actually go in?
Pretty big.
But yeah.
Well,
but
also that makes me think of the next good point. The COVID stuff, how it's like masks are mandatory. You should not be in big groups unless you're rioting for BLM, then it's fine.
Yeah.
And
also, that's right.
Fucking Joe Biden not wearing a mask at his inauguration ceremony and his press secretary saying, well, there's just more important stuff to worry about right now.
Like
you
what?
Tell everybody in the country we have to have masks all the fucking time, but you don't have to have one for reasons. Like, that should red pill the fuck out of people to realize, like, oh, maybe these aren't as important as they say they are.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. Actually, I want to rewind a little bit. when the pandemic was sort of new, when they were telling people, hey, do not get masks, do not get masks, and then they flipped and said, oh no no, masks are the greatest thing ever, they're better than any vaccine will ever be. That flipping, dude, it was raining red pills after that. Like, and they brought that on themselves, and they'll never admit it because of their egos. But
Oh, Fauci's the biggest liar of almost
yeah,
anybody in
that
office at this point.
that
He's
was a red
ridiculous.
pill. That was a red pill moment for me. I was just like, yeah, I don't trust Fauci anymore. Like, you can probably find someone who's very, 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 very qualified for that job that should take his place.
I
But
mean, too, it's he goes to the Nationals game, throws out the first pitch, and is sitting right next to his brother, who he doesn't live in the same house with, and it's just like, the fuck, you say we
yeah,
shouldn't be around anybody, and they keep pulling their masks down to talk to each other. It's like, you know, we can see you, right? Like, this
yeah,
is not, you're not like an
yeah.
optical illusion. Like, we can see you. Dr. Burke's going on that vacation with her
Oh,
family after telling everybody not to go. I mean, not Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo doing the same shit. Like all the bullshit with Chris Cuomo at CNN and all his like, bullshit coming out of the fucking basement after we knew like he'd been in altercations. It's just
yeah,
all these people who keep doing this. It's like, yeah, it's so clear they're lying. And
yeah.
if you're scared of COVID, that's fine. But if you think that they actually believe in what they're saying, I feel like you're kind of crazy, which it's probably bad to say. That doesn't necessarily red pill people to tell them that they're crazy. But it's like that's the kind of stuff that should make you take the red pill, where you're like, oh yeah, they're probably lying to me.
Yeah, and I mean that mask thing, the flip flop on the mask policy was especially pernicious because they tried so hard to cover that up and cover their asses, and it was so bad. I mean, it was such bad reasoning. Let me give you the example here. Like their follow up to that was just atrocious. It was like, okay, if you told us to not do masks and then to do it a short while afterwards, and not just do it but vigorously, um, one thing that was put out there was like, well, actually, we were trying to preserve masks for our healthcare workers. And it's like, well, why didn't you just say that? Why did you lie? You just admitted to lying then, because you said we didn't need them because they weren't effective. You didn't say they weren't effective and we're also trying to keep it for our healthcare workers, and make sure they have enough. So you lied in order to get this result that you wanted, right?
It's kind of crazy because if you think this through, right, they lied to make sure people did exactly what they wanted. Why do you even let people vote? If you think they're so stupid or
Yeah,
so immature or so greedy that they wouldn't like
yeah,
help the rest of the country, why do you even let fucking people vote? Like,
yeah.
why
Just
they're
but
not tested there for that?
yeah, just have an aristocracy, and they'll decide everything. Why
Yeah,
have people vote?
yeah, it's
Why at
social
all?
engineering, right? So it's like,
Yeah,
what? Yeah, it's
yeah,
just total nonsense.
and so then when you push people who believe that, there was like, no, no, I actually believe, it was okay to lie for the right reason or whatever. It's like, and you push them and you push them, and they eventually are just like, well, maybe that wasn't so great, but you know, um, they were just kind of following the science. Like we didn't have the evidence that masks were good or bad or whatever, and then we did, and I was like, no, we didn't get that evidence in the span of like a month or however many weeks before the flip flop occurred. Like that's BS that you think you you followed the science, um and the science told you, hey, your conclusion is wrong, and that whole process took like a few weeks for something as big as nationwide use of masks. That is insane. Look, everybody knows that science is not like this thing that says, hey, this thing is fact forever. It's all about falsifiability. It's like if you can come up with a better theory, that theory wins out. But that didn't happen over the span of like 3 weeks. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
that was actually further red pilling to me. It's just like, dude, no, don't act like you were following the scientific process here. That's BS. You didn't flip your opinion in 3 weeks and with like a preponderance of evidence and studies and all that. That's way too short of a timeline. So
Yeah.
yeah, that to me was a quintessential red pill moment, not just at the moment that it occurred, but afterwards when they tried to cover it up, and then afterwards when they kept trying to cover it up.
I always find science to be the biggest blue pilling thing, and that's on both sides, right? Like, because it's funny how the Republicans and Democrats will use their science against each other. Climate change is the biggest example, right? Where you see people are like, the world is going to end by 2030, and then Republicans who are just like, there's no climate change, it's a fucking hoax. It's like,
Yeah,
guys, you're both following your science by like dumbasses who nobody else agrees with. And then you got like 95% of the scientists who are like, well, we're going to see an increase in temperature. There could be some reduced fauna and,
Yeah.
plant life, flora and fauna. But overall, it's like it's survivable. It's going to
Yeah.
change the way stuff is. And people are like, no, that's not extreme enough.
Yeah, they're like,
It's like,
no, stop having children. You shouldn't have children. Which, by the way, if you want to kill the humanity of people, tell them that. Tell them that they shouldn't have children. That will, and then, I mean, that just, I don't even want to jump into that. That's just
yeah.
so
So
fucking
I
crazy.
got us on a tangent. So let's bring it
Yeah,
back. All right. So we've done a pretty good example, I think, of blue pill, red pill. Black pill. What's your good black pill example? If you don't have one, I think I've got one, more or less.
you can go first. I think I've got one. It would extend off of the red pill example because I always feel like an example for black pill would. But yeah, go ahead.
So if you look at the situation with the inauguration, well, not even the inauguration, but like when Joe Biden was became actual president, right? The six on the electors. If you look at the election, if you look at any of those situations, and decided to go build a bunker, you are black pilled, right? You believe that it is over, that it is done. We are just waiting out the days between civil war and like who knows what's going to happen after that. Also, I'm not saying that like having supplies and being prepared for bad situations is inherently bad. I'm just saying if you look at that day and we're like, well, fuck it, now I'm going to go do it. It's like, all right, you've taken the black pill, right? You didn't say, hey, I need to be prepared just because life is extreme and unpredictable. You said this one specific situation sent me over the edge. I see through all the bullshit, and I've decided the world is going to end. That's what I need to go do today.
I think that's a good example. I was going to say the moment that leads to a black pilling. I kind of have an example of that, and it's like I think after the after the BLM riots that occurred over the summer, I had a personal moment of blackpilling because I was like, dude, these videos that people put out of anything, of violence or of not of violence, showing people congregating together without masks, um, very close by each other, or with masks like partially down, and no one saying anything. I was like, dude, you can literally take any video showing anything, and people will just look at it and only see what they want to see, even if it's blatant. So like, let me give you an example. You could have a lady sitting down at a restaurant, and a mob of people run up to her and corner her and be like, "Raise your fist! Raise your fist!" This is an actual thing that happened, and you could watch the video of this, and you could see this mob of people pulling down their masks and yelling at this lady, like basically spitting in her face or on her food or whatever. And then nobody social distancing. And it's like the middle of a pandemic, and there's like multiple things going on here that are totally wild. Number one, no one says anything about the masks all of a sudden. It's all about the
Yep.
BLM protests. And number two, when did it become okay to treat your fellow citizen like that and try and force them to raise their hand or put the flag up or whatever? And
Well,
apparently
that's
those two
just
things are,
anti-racism. That's
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah,
You got to be
yeah,
anti-racist.
yeah, actively anti-racist, where we change the definition of the word racism just to emotionally manipulate you. But yeah, it's when you see that and you're just like, oh, okay, we live in a society where put up the flag, otherwise we take note of you, and also where you could literally show them video of something, and they will only they will ignore even if it's blatantly like the main point of the video and very much in the frame, will ignore everything except for what they choose to see, or start getting into this, well, this is bad but yours is worse, your side is worse, this stupid false dichotomy that people draw whenever they run out of any other logic to deploy. That leads you to like a place of nihilism. He's like, okay, there's literally nothing you can do to convince somebody of anything, or even just get, not even convince them, just be like, hey, do you see where I'm coming from? You can't even get them to admit that. And it's like, okay, well, if I can't do it to one person, I can't do it to 10 people, I can't do it to 1,000 people, it can't happen with 1,000,000 people, so fuck it. um that's kind of my black pill example.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. Honestly, the most recent time that I had any inkling of black pill was during that first fucking debate with Trump and Biden, and I'm just looking at like these one of these two idiots is gonna run the country.
Yep.
We're
Yeah,
done. It's over. Like,
yeah,
call it a night. It's done. And then
great
I had to
example.
think to myself, it's like, wait, it doesn't matter. Trump's already been here, so it's just status quo. And
Yeah,
Biden is just Obama. We lived through that. Sorry, I just like, but while you're watching it, it's like, what in the fuck? And then you have to step back and be like, actually, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, yeah, we can't have leaders now, so fuck it. No
Shut
leaders.
up.
We're headless chickens. Yeah, that's a great blackpilling. So let's go for a white pill moment. I think we both got good examples of this because this is probably, like I said, this is where we're at. So, um, yeah, go ahead.
So my biggest white pill is the new internet, right? Like
Yeah,
that's coming. And if you don't think that that's fine, I think if you look at where we're at and where the tech is and all the platforms that exist. So me personally, I've stopped purchasing anything through Amazon. I will not do anything through Amazon anymore. Right? I'm letting my Prime subscription run out. I have removed all my subscriptions from the Amazon store, etc. And when I start to look, it's like, oh yeah, so Amazon is a nice centralized setup, but the whole internet exists, right? I can go find anything I had as a subscription somewhere else, and almost always I can get free shipping and a subscription on that site, right? So now I'm distributed. So I just don't have to worry if Amazon decides to jack up the prices, decides to like boot me from my account. I'm still fine. I've got dozens of accounts, which sounds more annoying than it is because we've also solved that. We have all these password managers, we have account managers that let you be distributed across multiple things and still be able to sign in, right? It's like to me, that's my white pill where I just feel like I'm just in this feeling like, oh my God, Amazon, they own too much, they're too hard to take down, it's going to be impossible. And also that this comes from somebody who's worked at Amazon. I understand how the fucking company runs, right? They actually suck. Their tech's shitty. Like it just is. It's years behind what it should be, and they have no way to catch up anytime soon. It's bad. But I just look at it as like, oh, how could you take them on? And then I realize how fucking easy it is to move off of them. I'm like, if people just wake up to this, they can be beaten very easily. This is not hard to beat them.
yeah. I think what they have is they have market share, they have momentum, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like people are waking up. I think all across every aisle, people are waking up. And
Agreed.
so you have a target audience for tech revolution. So I don't want to steal your white pill example because I felt like you were going to go there and I wanted you to do that one. I'll give you a separate example because I of course believe in the example you brought up 150%. That was a big white pill moment for me. But I'll bring up another one that maybe is a smaller white pill moment, which is like this podcast, for example. Why even do this podcast? Well, it's because of hope. It's like, okay, well, there are a lot of people, we don't agree on everything altogether, but there are a lot of people waking up to this type of stuff. They're waking up to the woke stuff too. They're waking up to all the big tech craziness. And they're all, friends and family included. And it's like, well, we could put something out there that talks to 10 people, talks to 15 people, talks to 20 people, talks to 25 people. And those people can keep talking to other people. And there's this kind of feeling of like there's enough people that are questioning things at a very basic level where they weren't before. Like I said, asking fifth grader level questions. Um, and and it feels like there's hope and there's optimism. There's enough of that to want to actually have real conversations with people and get them to actually act on their thoughts. Like in the ways that you're talking about, like, hey, I'm going to go use boxed.com or something like that instead of Amazon for my subscription or chewy.com for my pet subscriptions or, whatever. There's like this actual optimism around reaching out and talking to people again. And
Yeah.
that's kind of been a white pill moment for me, actually.
Right. And you know what? Here's a thought too, just for everybody, because I was just kind of woken up to this when I started getting off Amazon. You could just buy directly from the vendor, right? Like I buy a protein called Isopure, right? It's like this whey isolate protein. It's got basically nothing extra added to it. It is as pure as you can get. And it's just like, why don't I just order from them? Right? Why am I giving Amazon a fucking
Yeah.
ton of this as opposed to just going directly to them? They're the product I want. I want them to succeed because I think they make a great product. Why in the world do I keep giving Amazon a cut? And the answer
No.
is, well, because just kind of pure laziness, right? And it's just more convenient. It's like, but it's not that much more convenient. It's easy for me to just go there and order it. It's like, oh, I need an extra, 5 minutes out of my day once a month, or I could just order three, and now I just need it once every 3 months. It's like, it's really simple if you just step back for a second. You're like, is it worth 15 minutes of my time to stop giving money to this shitty company? I was like, oh yeah, actually it is. It is. It's a lot worth it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, that says it all right there. It's like, yeah, there's hope, there's optimism, there's a realizing of, hey, it's worth it. Um, that's what led to this podcast, frankly. So in a way, maybe we were white pilled at some point, even when we just started this, but and have re-white pilled ourselves over time. But um, yeah, I think that's kind of what the white pill is. It's like seeing that, hey, there's enough people here to do something, and I could do something on a personal level too. Um, so I would say that that's a good white pill example. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would want to tell people too. So going a little bit off the topic of the pilling, it's like
Yeah.
I think people feel like they just don't make a difference, right? Oh, well, yeah, maybe I can change stuff, but it doesn't matter. Well, it matters to you. And also, if you don't think you can impact somebody else, right? Like you can. Like the goal is not to change the world. It should be change yourself, change your family, change your friends, change your community, change your
Yes.
your city, your state, your
100%.
US, and then go from there. I mean, even and change is a strong word too. It's not even change in the sense like, oh, they got to totally reform. It's just make some adjustments, right?
Yeah.
Modify yourself by 1%, 2% to get off Amazon, get off Google, get off these big platforms that are really stifling people, right? It's like it just doesn't cost that much to do.
And reach out to the 10 people that are susceptible to listening, or or interested in the conversation, even if they completely disagree with you politically. Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's like, yeah, everything is really more local, and things go from local to bigger than local. It's not really. I guess one big aspect of white pill is realizing that the world doesn't cleanly operate from like a top down perspective. It's more of a bottom up thing, you know.
Yeah.
And it starts with like your family, your friends. With us, our podcast is like, okay, yeah, our 20 listeners or whatever, um, and growing it out from there, and allowing them to grow it out too in their own way, and just having I don't know, just faith in organic hope, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know
and
what
just
else to call it.
trusting that good things take time. It just is what it is, right? You just perseverance matters, and also it's like the culture dictates things. So never forget that probably 50% of people are lemmings. That just is a fact, right? They're just kind of going
Yeah.
to do whatever the culture dictates they should do. And also, a shit ton of people are just busy. They don't have time to look into this or really think about it, right? You work 9 to 5 minimum. Then you got 2 kids to come home to. Oh, and then you're trying to save up so you can get that better house, or you're trying to save up so you can get that better car because your car sucks. It's like you just don't have time to look into stuff. So you're just going to look into whatever the narrative is that you're given, right? That's the
Right. Yeah.
standard blue pill setup. But those people are also very open to culture changing, just if it's got enough of a narrative behind it. So if you change your locality, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to change the people who are close to me, right? Maybe a couple of friends, maybe my wife, blah blah blah, and they're going to get off Amazon, and then we're going to talk about it more. We're going to bring it up. It's like, yeah, we're getting off Amazon. We really just like that, and so they're going to hear it, and they're not going to do anything today. It's not going to happen, but then they're going to hear from somebody else who says they're doing it, and then they're going to see it on Facebook trending or Twitter trending, and then they're going to see it somewhere else, and they're like, you know what? You're right. I don't really like Amazon. I'm going to go buy somewhere else. It's like you can get those people. You just have to know they're hard to convert but easy to keep. That's another thing about them, right? It's like as soon as you convert them to your stance, they're like with you forever until this next person puts in all that time to change them. So
Yeah.
look at it as like a long-term paying off stock, right? It just you can't expect to change tomorrow. And if you get mad, calm down and remember you're basically asking somebody in a wheelchair to just start walking. It's like that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right? It's like they're
Yeah.
limited. They do not have the means to do anything today. So don't expect them to walk today, right? It takes time. They got to build up some muscle. They got to get going. They got to see
Yeah.
some more stuff. They got to hear more stuff.
And I think that's kind of what I mean by organic hope. It's like they have to kind of cultivate their own hope, but you have faith that they'll do it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I think that's where you're at. Um, I think that's honestly a good point to wrap this one up. A good positive point.
I
Um,
agree. We're trying to stay
yeah,
positive lately. It's been great.
yeah, it's actually been great. We had some tough ones. Maybe because I think I was
Our
in the
black
black pill.
pills, yeah, our
Yeah,
black pill segments were real strong black pilled, but we have
yeah,
since we've been converted to the white pill. We're good to go.
Yeah, we've ascended the black pill, I would say, successfully, because I do generally and genuinely feel optimistic about things, especially on the tech side, which is where we're always focused. So,
Yeah.
um,
Once again,
yeah,
that
with
doesn't mean things will change tomorrow, but long
nope,
term, the prospects are good. They just
it
are. If
means
you don't
yeah,
see it, I get it, but they are. Trust me.
yeah, and the 1% or the 0.5% changes that are occurring, more rapidly, those are actually happening, right? Like the 1% change of D Rush getting his protein powder directly from the manufacturer, that's happening. You know, that's happening on for me too. It's like, well, I'm going to use a little bit less Google. I'm going to use a little bit less this. I actually did that in 2012 where I used other search engines rather than Google, like DuckDuckGo and Bing.
It's great. You
Um,
still find things.
yeah,
It's fine.
yeah, you still find things. Yeah, you're fine. Um, so those little 1% and 0.5% bits of progress, incremental progress, are actually happening. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Um, I hope that we gave you a really good idea of the red pill, blue pill, white pill, black pill kind of setup. And I hope you join us on our journey here.
Yeah. Also, if you
Um,
know of any other pills, feel free to let us know.
yeah,
We were debating that. Like,
let
is
us
there
know.
like an orange pill, a purple pill? We don't know of them. So
Yeah, we
feel
don't.
free to leave a comment if there are such pills.
Yeah. And so a quick update to listeners. So as you know, we're Click and Obey. We're on every major podcasting platform out there. We're starting to open up to some other platforms. Um, we're on YouTube now, and you'll probably see us on Telegram. More, and we're also trying to maybe get a little bit of outreach going.
Stars, all that stuff helps the algorithm.
Yep, help the algorithm. Hashtag help the algorithm and spread our white pill joy. And with that said, stay safe, y'all.
Peace.